We are here today to talk about the incident last night, a very serious injury crash that occurred around 6:45 p.m. on Albuquerque's west side. The initial call came in as a crash. There were some witnesses that witnessed it, called 911, and what it appeared to be was a motorcycle struck a pedestrian who was crossing the street. We determined that the individual that was injured was taken to the hospital. Like I said, he had critical head injuries, and they're very, very serious and life-threatening at this point. About 2 hours after the fact, as investigators, our fatal team was out there investigating, we learned that an off-duty officer was likely the driver of the motorcycle. Apparently the passenger was also an off-duty officer and had contacted a colleague who works in another part of the city. That colleague notified a sergeant. Sergeant notified the traffic unit, and so at that point word started getting out that off-duty officers were possibly involved in this. I think another 2 hours went by and the two officers returned to the scene, and they were separately detained and questioned initially by investigators. However, I know the male officer did exercise his constitutional rights and declined to speak further about the incident. However, he did indicate that he was driving and did drive through that intersection, struck the motorcyclist, and continued on westbound on Central. So at this point, we have our fatal unit was investigating, is still investigating. We do treat this sort of as a multi-agency task force deployment, whereas we have other detectives who went to the scene, and then we have other agencies. So in this case, New Mexico State Police had an officer shadowing the investigation last night and today. We're continuing to look at all possibilities of this. The officer Florez was placed under arrest and charged at this point. The female officer, Officer Garcia, was not arrested. She was taken home, but investigators are still looking at all possibilities, including possible further charges for one or both of them. Any questions?
Can you just tell us what charges Florez is facing?
So right now it's leaving the scene of an accident involving great bodily harm. But like I said, there could be other charges as detectives continue to investigate.
What units do both of the officers work in?
You know, I'm not certain. I shouldn't say that. They're in the field. They're brand new officers. I think they've just been on the force for 1 year, so they just escalated to patrol first class. But I want to say in the southeast, but I have to confirm that, and I'll let you know.
Do you know if they're both out of the same academy?
They are. They graduated February of 2024.
Did they communicate why they ran?
They did not, no.
How is the department reacting to this?
Well, you know, it's on one hand, it's very disappointing. Officers respond to traffic accidents all the time, every day, and they respond to a lot of fatal traffic accidents and serious injuries. So they see the consequences of what happens when people are speeding. It appears that the motorcycle was going nearly twice the speed limit at that point through the intersection. We're tracking other cameras and where the motorcycle was before and after. And even though it may have had a green light at that point, it may have blown through other red lights previous to that. So we're still investigating that. But getting back to your question, it is very, very disappointing. I mean, not only were these officers involved in this tragic accident, but they left the scene and did not. From every indication, they did not notify medical or emergency or AFR or anyone else to provide help for this individual who was struck. You know, it's something people get charged with. That's what they're getting charged with, and you know, it may not have helped. We don't know, but that's a basic duty of an officer to make sure that the public is safe.
And then I know you mentioned there was other, New Mexico State Police, they were shadowing, but is it going to be mainly an APD investigation or maybe other enforcement agencies joining in on this?
No, it is an APD investigation, yeah. And they did work with the district attorney's office, so they consulted with them in terms of bringing the charge that they felt they could bring at this point and not charging the officer yet at this point, too.
The complaint mentions that A witness said that the person struck appeared to be homeless. Has that been verified?
We do believe the person was homeless. We have identified the individual through fingerprints. We're having a tough time reaching next of kin.
Okay, there's also a video of the incident. Is it going to be released?
You know, it's not going to be released at this point. We'll have to check. I'm not sure under IPRA whether that is released or when, but I did see the video this morning, and it's pretty shocking. It's very obvious the motorcycle just flew through that intersection. The victim was kind of darting through traffic, but I'm sure he had no idea the motorcycle was going that fast. But I don't want to speak for him, but yeah.
And then, just sorry if I missed this, we're not sure if they were speeding yet. That's still being investigated.
I think it's very clear that they were speeding. The exact rate of speeding we don't know just yet, but probably like in excess of 70 miles an hour. I think the speed limit was maybe 40 to 45 in that area, and it was a big, heavy motorcycle. So just clipping that individual obviously could cause a lot of damage.
Since these were newer recruits, is there anything that APD overall wants to say? Because, whenever people come into the program, you want them to be the best examples.
We can't predict duty and their behavior off duty, but, at this point, this just happened last night. So we want to investigate all possibilities. We don't know what was going on, what led up to that, so detectives will want to figure that out. But in general, like I said, it's just very disappointing. This is a very tragic incident. Someone could lose their life as a result of it, and anybody. We tell the public all the time to slow down. There's no need to rush anywhere. These are the kind of consequences, and families are just shattered every day because of these types of incidents. So the fact that officers may have and appear to have been responsible for something like this, it's just heartbreaking. So we do have advocates who deal with our homicide unit and with our traffic unit. So if we do find family, they'll be there for them. But it's the first reaction too is that Central and Coors is an area where we have a lot of transients darting through traffic in like other areas of the city. But like I said, after watching the video, there's no excuse for the motorcycle to be driving that fast, even on a green light.
And just for clarification, this was an American V-twin type motorcycle, not a crotch rocket?
No, it looked like a Harley, something like that, yeah. You guys have any questions? No?
Would you be able to repeat the first part of what we missed?
Yeah, so just this basic timeline. It's about 6:45. We got calls about a crash involving a pedestrian and a motorcycle at Coors and Central on the west side. Officers responded. About 2 hours into it, we learned that an individual had contacted a colleague within the department and indicated that they were involved in the crash. That individual notified a sergeant. They notified the traffic unit that was investigating, and a lot of calls started getting made, and we started expanding the investigation. So we did learn at that point that it was an off-duty officer that was driving the motorcycle, and then another off-duty officer that was also riding the motorcycle. They did admit that the male individual was driving, later told officers that he did go through the intersection to strike the person and did continue going on westbound, but declined to say anything further after that. So at this point, we're looking through every possibility, looking through all the, investigating to see what may have led up to that, what happened afterward, to see if any other charges would apply.
Are they on leave?
Yeah, they're both right away. We had internal affairs go out, and they put them on administrative leave pending the internal investigation.
And the light was green.
It appeared it was green at that point. One witness did say they thought it was red, so they're still looking at all of those possibilities and calculating speeds, as I said.
Gotcha. And then you said you couldn't give an estimate as to how fast they were going.
I could estimate in the 70s, but that was just preliminary on seeing what they were estimating last night.
So is Florez facing the charges is he facing the charges?
Yes. And as I said, the investigators worked with the district attorney's office to see whether the female could be charged at all. At this point, they decided against charges, but they will still investigate, and if something else turns up. So, they had to, I think they served warrants. They did get the motorcycle. They found the motorcycle later on. It did indicate that it had been involved in an incident that matches what we saw on scene. So I think they've done other search warrants as well. They did come in a vehicle from, I think, her house back to the scene. But like I said, it was about 4 or 5 hours after the crash. So that delayed things quite a bit. But they did do a search warrant on that vehicle, and they'll be searching phones, all those sorts of things too.
Has there been a reason so far as to why they did eventually come back after all those hours?
I don't know. I know that the first officer that was notified did encourage the female to go back to the scene. I mean, it's something that they should do. Anyone that's involved in something like that should stay at the scene and talk to officers no matter what happened, help determine what happened. And they know that better than anyone. Anything else? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.